Yeah, I'll give you a note when I have to leave. So I think I'll stay for another 10 minutes, and
Okay, great.
Okay.
I'll give you a bye then, and
All
I'll head
right.
off to work. Okay, then.
Okay, Kat.
Continue.
So, so you just started talking about Anapanasati and how step 10 of gladdening the mind
Yeah, so
cleanses.
yeah, so that was what we discussed last week, and so I put that into practice this week, and I think that I had assumed that having sort of thoughts going, even while you're kind of in going through the steps, you should try and avoid those, but actually actively thinking about gladdening the mind was seemed to work well,
Yes.
and yeah. You know, and that kind of it seemed to work in terms of waking me up as well, you know. So there were, I think that there's, yeah, I'm just interested to hear more about how that step of gladdening the mind and right effort kind of relates to all the other factors.
Okay. This little phrase will sum it up.
Okay.
And we need to unpack this, but it's a phrase that generally is so surprising. And that is this: you have spent your whole life talking yourself into feeling bad. Now it's time to talk yourself into feeling good. That is basically what it's all about, because we're in the habit of talking ourselves into feeling bad. Just life experiences can begin to mount up. Let's say that you had an argument with a friend. You've got an email that you've got to answer. That the project at work is not going the way that you want it to, and we're sitting at home in meditation with a basic uneasy feeling inside that doesn't fit quite with any of those things that I just mentioned. It seems like that they just kind of pile up, and there's a whole lot of stuff going on. And this is how we normally just live our lives, with a thought about one of them, then a thought about another one, and then a thought about another one. And all collectively, each one of them is like a drop in a bucket. It's on a scale, and it just gets heavier and heavier. And we begin to feel that on the inside. So, in a way, what I'm talking about, a lot of people say, well, I'm not actually talking myself into feeling bad. Yeah, but you're talking to yourself about things and you wind up feeling bad. We always wind up feeling bad about undone work, unfinished arguments. And any argument that you get into will be remaining unfinished. And the reason that it's remaining unfinished is because no matter what you do, you can't convince anybody in an argument that you're right and they're wrong. And so the best thing that we can do with an argument is to end the argument and have some friendly moments instead, because the argument, other than that, but when that argument is, let us say, is broken off, it's still unfinished because both people go continuing to think about that argument, and neither one of them feel particularly good about anything or particularly good about themselves. And this is the way that we live our lives. But now we're going to say, wait a minute, we're going to turn this thing around intentionally so that every time I remember, I'm going to start treating myself well. So one of the dichotomies or the distinctions we could use is coming from psychology, transactional analysis, where Eric Berne talks about the parent ego state. And we can see that the parent ego state, in reference to what Berne is talking about, our learned, stored rules, procedures, way things should be done. expected outcomes, things to hope for, and all of that kind of stuff. But it gets delivered in entirely different two forms. One is in the early days, the mother will care for and nurture her child, her baby. Also, dog owners do that. Dog owners will nurture and care for and provide for the dog when he's a puppy, when he's in middle age, and when he is in old age. But for our children, we have more expectations of them. The dog may be a trick or two, but the kid, he's got to have a PhD. He's got to have an education. And as children, and I've watched kids, they don't want to hold their attention on something unless they're very interested in it. For instance, a kid can get into a video game and just be so intent and learn so much from that video game, but you put the book of ABCs in front of him, and he hates it. All right? So a lot of our education is thou shalt be educated, whether you like it or not. And so we start to practice meditation that way. You should meditate. It's good for you, right? And right off the bat, we are changing it from the nurturing parent into the critical parent. So in that regard, we have been critical of ourselves, critical of our environment, critical of the politics, critical of the car, critical of everything, and we get into in the position of just not liking stuff. And that begins to mount up with us on the inside. So we get a kind of an unsatisfactory sense of non-well-being. And that we need to turn that around, and the way that we do is going to turn it around from being critical of ourselves into being nurturing. To nurture. This is what gladdening the mind is, and I know that it's a very old way of doing it, but the Buddha and Bhikkhu Buddhadasa both knew very well what this was all about. I'm just using a different terminology for it to help people understand. But this state of gladdening the mind is nothing but the nurturing part of your own parent ego state saying, my, what a good boy you are. As opposed to, you got to go get that stuff done, and then I'll say, my, what a good boy you are. But if you do get it done, I want to come and criticize it. And my attaboys may be very few and far between. We need to start bunching them together. You deserve the credit that you haven't been given yourself. This is what the gladdening the mind is all about, is actually to gladden the mind. Or another way of saying it is that how can you cheer up a child? How do you do it? How do you cheer up a child? They're actually quite easy to cheer up. Children are a whole lot easier to cheer up than adults are. But adults can be cheered up also. But you can cheer up a child by nurturing the child, by giving the child something that they like, even if it's not what they want. So this is how we have to start doing it. We have to start nurturing ourselves. We have to tell ourselves the good. And in that regard, we go back to that very famous story of the Buddha when he was not yet a Buddha, when he was actually putting this whole thing together. And when I say the whole thing, I'm talking about from the top down, the teachings of dukkha, dukkha nirodha, down to the next level, which is the Four Noble Truths, down into that second noble truth, deep into it is where we find paticca samuppada. And also in Anapanasati, that investigation is really what we're talking about with Paticca Samuppada, is learn to investigate what's in the mind. And the Anapanasati practice is to wake up and investigate. So it's all about that investigation. And what the Buddha did say, and this is actually possibly one of the most famous quotes of the Buddha. Aha, I see you, Mara. Okay. Now, what is that? That's just so packed. Aha is gladness. I see you, Mara, is actually saying that instead of I actually am the Mara, I'm in the Mara is sticking me down and I'm feeling bad, that we withdraw, we separate ourselves from what the mind is doing, and we can look back upon the mind. And that looking back upon the mind then I can see what the mind was just doing just now. Mara. What is the Mara? That is the delusional, the unhappy, the hindrances, anything that has prevented us from having a bright, gladdened mind. So in a way, aha, I see you, Mara, means that I recognize that the mind had hindrances, and then I throw it out happily, that we give ourselves credit for, and we nourish ourselves because of the newfound tool, sati. That normally the mind is in hindrance. Normally the mind has just got junk thoughts or things, and they wind up making us feel kind of icky inside, and we spend our whole day that way, thinking icky thoughts and kind of feeling icky. So when we have sati and with the understanding that, going back to Goenka's method, is watch the breath, and if the mind wanders away from the breath, never mind, start again, come back to the breath. All right, but that never mind quality is also jam-packed and needs to be unpacked. The never mind is actually the sati, to wake up, to recognize that the mind was in hindrance, and then we can say, yeah, but never mind. Never mind that the mind was off someplace. We caught that. Congratulations for seeing that stuff. And we can come back, and the very beginner is going to come back to the breath. But as we progress in our practice, that never mind start again. What that starting again is going to be gladdening the mind, taking a deep breath, bringing on the satisfaction, or getting ourselves into a state of pleasure, the Pali word sukha. And that word sukha actually is the way that we would feel. This is not yucky. We feel satisfied now. We don't feel icky or yucky or like there's a tightness in the chest or any of those sensations. Instead, take a deep breath and relax. And so we can relax, okay? As we do that, time after time after time, over and over and over again, we begin to develop the confidence that, oh yes, all I have to do is to wake up, see what the mind is doing, throw that stuff out, gladden the mind again, and allow myself to feel good over and over and over again. By doing this and doing it successfully over and over again, something new is developed, and that is confidence. Wada, I can do this. And so the very, very first truth that is noble, super mundane, and a factor of the path is that knowledge of, no matter whether the mind is hindered or not, or how much so, or how often, or how heavy it is, I can throw that stuff out. I can take a deep breath. I can flirt with Mara by saying, ha ha, I see you. Bye-bye.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
See you.
Bye-bye. Thanks for the chat. See ya.
See ya.
Okay. And that aha, bye-bye, I see you, Mara, is actually part of the gladdening of the mind. And it has a relief quality to it because we have disassociated ourselves and taken ourselves out of it. Before, I was the Mara. When I'm thinking about that email that I've got to write, it's me writing that email.
Yeah.
I don't like it a bit.
Yeah.
Especially if I got to make a big decision that's going to cost $20,000 or something like that. Okay. And so me, my money, my problem, my blah, blah. But now we can say, wait a minute. I don't have to write that email right now. I can write that email tomorrow. Let me, for right now, finish with that stuff. Take a deep breath, get it off my chest, and relax for the moment. And then we know I can do that. I can do that anytime I want to. So this is where confidence builds. And with that confidence comes a change of attitude. A major change in one's attitude from being a victim of our own thoughts into being the champion of our feelings. I can feel good. I can do this. I can feel good. That's what we're looking for, is how good this feels right now, rather than the critical parent thinking, how good could it feel? Oh, yeah, well, you feel good, right? You're on the third step of a ladder that's got 20 rungs on it. Why don't you look at the next 17 rungs? I mean, you've got so much work to do. It's not the right attitude with this. That's just more hindrance. You got to say, wow, isn't it great to step 3? I like it here. So then we're developing real skill of being satisfied. Not a false satisfaction or a social satisfaction, or like when somebody says, how are you? And you say fine because you don't really want to tell them how you really feel.
Classic. I think
other than that, you can really feel fine. So when they ask you, you say, man, I feel fine.
Yeah. I think one of the reasons that I hadn't quite developed right effort fully is because of this sort of cultural idea. It maybe felt like I was faking it, you know? Do you know what I mean? It sort of felt like cheating, or somehow kind of that affirmation, that sort of self-affirmation rang sort of quite hollow when I was starting out, you know.
Yes,
you're
but
feeling
that's
good.
Being your critical parent.
Exactly.
Saying that this is not good enough. It's fake.
Yeah.
It's not real.
Yeah.
Rather than nurturing by saying, hey, you've got an ounce.
Yeah.
It's not 10 pounds, but we don't need 10 pounds right now. We need that first ounce.
Yeah, but I definitely I wasn't doing that for a while, and then since we spoke, I got back to it, and I have found that there's definitely been progress in terms of really believing that when I get to that moment of sati and stillness, and it has a much more kind of, for want of a better word, like a physical solidity almost to it, that feeling of centeredness and control. It feels like connected to like really good physical sensations, but also of kind of I don't know, confidence and stillness, and it's got more it's more rooted somehow, and it's a case of that but quote unquote belief is connected to kind of feelings of more vivid sort of awareness of what's going on in my body and what's pleasurable about that, and it's kind of, it's not kind of confidence in terms of, it's connected to all of these other things basically that are kind of all brought together in the moment of the breath. So yeah, that's really amazing to see. And sometimes when like sitting, trying to kind of trying as finely as I can to kind of capture the moment of now, as it were, like it's in terms of reading about, I mean, this is going a bit off topic, but reading Buddhadasa's book on the Paticca Samuppada, and this idea of each moment being, you're born in each moment, and trying to as much as I can, trying to see that moment, you know, and that
every moment is brand new. That's the thing that's so amazing. That every moment is new.
But the trying to sort of see that, and also being like, well, what is now, like what's happening like now, and you realize that question kind of disconnects you a bit from, or it makes you a bit more aware of what has happened, what's memory and what's kind of foresight, and that connected to this right effort has been because normally what would happen before was my mind would wander in a really kind of crude way, and I would like get stuck in actual thoughts, and then I you know, at the start of meditation I'd realize I'd been completely not in the room, but now it's much more I can sort of, my mind can be in two places at once a bit. So in terms of clearing out the mind,
isn't that amazing how fast the mind is? It's so fast that you can be in two places simultaneously. But in fact, no, that's not the case. You just jump back and forth between the two of them.
Right. Okay.
You're here and then you're there, and then you're here and then you're there. And that's a lot of jumping around, a lot of activity of jumping. Yes. And so the settling in then is beginning to start monitoring. Once sati is, let us say that there's the first spark of sati, that when the mind is completely wandered away from the breath. And so now we take all of the right effort, we take a deep breath and we get into it. Now what we're looking at is to keep the sati going with each breath twice. Once on the long, deep in breath and one on the long, deep out breath. So long as that's all you need to notice is this a long, deep breath? Is that a long, deep out breath? And so that leaves the mind plenty of other time in that breath. That's one of the reasons why we want to have a long, slow breath, because then we have plenty of time to do all the other parts of Anapanasati. But the important part here is to begin to put the mind on guard for keeping only wholesome thoughts in. Because unwholesome thoughts have the quality that they will very quickly become hindrances and even painful. And wholesome thoughts are generally in two different topics that merge together as one. And that is the teaching of the Buddha or the Dhamma, which is what we're talking about here. But we're talking about it in regard to this present moment. So they kind of merge together. So thoughts of the Dhamma or thoughts about this present moment would then be considered a nice long list of wholesome thoughts to have. And thoughts of the past, thoughts of the future, thoughts of some place that we are not, thoughts of other times, other places, other people that are not here, anybody that we think of that's not right in front of us, which also then we can say, well, wait a minute, if people are right in front of us, doesn't that mean then we need to pay attention to what they're doing and what they're saying? Absolutely is true. Yes, that's exactly right. Listening to what somebody says takes sati. It takes remembrance. You have to look. Because generally what the mind will do is, it normally does, is, well, I'm going to have to talk in a minute. I better have something to say. I better think of something to say. What? Oh, I've got it now. This is what I'm going to say. Will you please shut up now? But I don't say it out loud, so I can talk. And that's how. And then we're not in this present moment. So whether we're with people or not, we still have that quality of the mind that wants to jawbone. We're not saying to stop talking. We're saying that we're going to guide that into wholesome thought. To guide it into wholesome thought. So the thoughts that we have are, again, thoughts about gladdening the mind, thoughts of nurturing, thoughts about, hey, this is so nice, thoughts about, this is not dukkha, this is dukkha nirodha, this is the third noble truth. Wow, it feels so good to be free from suffering right now. Okay, so these are the kind of words that we will use when we are continuing with that guarding quality, to guard, to make sure that only wholesome thoughts are there. Now, this is not really a lot of concentration, but it is the quality of gathering the factors together. This is what we mean by the word samadhi, that normally in English is translated as concentration. I know you used the word, and I knew I'd have to pounce on it.
Yeah.
Because the word concentration is actually the word that's translated out of the word samadhi. But the word samadhi actually has closer meaning to gather things together. The things that you want. So in some cases, samadhi and concentration are exactly opposites. An example is frozen concentrated orange juice. Do you drink frozen concentrated orange juice? I don't know of anybody who does. Maybe a kid or two from occasion just to prove a point. Most of us will add water to it. Right? And then it's not concentrated anymore, but now it's complete enough to drink. So when we add all the needed factors together, this is what we call samadhi. And many students think that this is what we mean by a concentrated mind. Perhaps a better word would be just a focused mind, or a mind that's on guard to keep the thoughts wholesome. That's not really concentrated. We're only taking about half of our vocabulary out. That we're not going down to ending no thought or anything like that. We're just sort of putting a boundary up. Anything that's not here now, well, I'm not sure. It may not be exactly 50-50. It may be closer to about 70-20 or 70-30. And we put ourselves in that 30% mark and leave out that other 70%, which is mostly hogwash. It's mostly the hindrances, and it's the kind of thoughts that we normally have. Critical thoughts. So when you start looking for the quality of thoughts that you're having, keep in mind this quality of critical versus nurturing, so that you begin to nurture yourself, to tell yourself, this is really nice, you're doing a good job. You don't have to do that in order to feel good. You can just feel good now. I give you permission. It's okay to feel good.
Could you talk a bit about the difference between, because sometimes when I'm sitting, I can feel that the sort of, when I make efforts to apply right effort, then the mind will clear out and I can return to a very samadhi-like state. And other times, thankfully not so much recently, but my mind will just be like completely real monkey mind. And then I'm rather than get frustrated, I just try and observe. Can you talk a bit about like the observation as that? Can that also be a kind of wholesome state?
Absolutely. That in fact is actually listed in the sutta, in the Chitta Nupassana section of the sutta number 10 in the Satipatthana Sutta.
Right.
Number 10 in the Majjhima Nikaya. It talks about to observe the states and the conditions of mind. Sometimes the mind is focused, sometimes it's scattered, sometimes it's exalted, sometimes it's sleepy and tired, The mind is actually an organic thing. It's not like a PC, and even PCs, the Windows will get cluttered. And you need to reinstall Windows from time to time, or at least reboot to clean up memory, okay? So that's the way of looking at it is that we want to observe what the condition of the mind is. And you're doing that kind of naturally, which is correct. That's the correct thing to do. And to accept it. Give yourself nurturing. Oh, the mind is really scattered right now. I can see that. Well, it's all over the place. Never mind. Start again. Never mind. Start again.
So there's like a component to right effort, which is allowing it to be what it will be, or is that a different factor? Or?
That's part of right effort. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Is actually the AA prayer in a way. You know the AA prayer, don't you? They call it the AA
I am
prayer.
not in control. It's sort of something like that.
Basically, it says is that God grant me the wisdom. No, wait a minute. God grant me the strength to change the things that I can change.
And accept
the serenity to accept the things that I can't change, and the wisdom to know the difference. Okay, so that's exactly where we are right now. Is the strength to change the things we can change is we can take a deep breath. The things that we can change is the content of the mind. The things that we cannot change is the condition of the mind so quickly. You can't change the condition of the mind so easily. But the deep breathing will certainly help. That's one of the, in the sutra someplace, breathing is one of the antidotes for drowsiness.
Yeah, drowsiness is a problem I find, and I guess because you can get into these states where you feel like you're kind of quite a samadhi state, but actually you're just sort of a bit switched off and actually just dozing.
I know. This whole meditation, anapanasati, and the way that it's structured, is to brighten the mind. Is to make the mind shiny and sharp and focused and capable of doing a good job. But a lot of people think that all meditation means I've got to sit for a long time. And so they sit and they practice, and what happens if they're not breathing very well, then the mind will get tired, they'll slip into a state of dullness, and then they think that is samadhi. And they also will say, oh, well, I can get great insight by looking at how things are. Well, no, wait a minute. We don't need to investigate. I mean, if somebody sends you shit on toast, all you have to do is open it one time and see what that is and close it and throw it out. You don't need to put it under a microscope and inspect it, and taste it, and feed it to several people and all of that kind of stuff. That once it's a pile of crap, we know it's a pile of crap. And so that's the way that we can recognize hindrances as hindrance, and drowsiness as a part of the hindrance is that anything that keeps us from being bright is not correct practice. That's part of the reason why we do the breathing as part of it, is to help wake us up, to really be in charge. So that's where the strength comes in. The strength is the right effort to take that breath, to gladden the mind. But that doesn't mean that the mind is going to be sharp just yet. That it still may be dull, it still may be scattered, but if we keep practicing, never mind, start again. But if we start yelling at ourselves like, oh, monkey mind, oh, there you go again, oh, that's too bad. Now look how we feel, right? We're not nurturing, now we're being critical of it. So be sure that when you're recognizing that the mind is dull, Do it like a nurturing mom would. Oh, we need to put this kid in bed and give him some chicken juice, chicken broth, and help him to feel good. Take his work away from you. You don't have to go to school now. Just sit and relax. Okay, so this is the way that we want to look at it, is to nurture ourselves, even when we have the dull mind,
Okay.
or unfocused or unsharp mind. And you'd be surprised that in fact, can, over the period of, say, 60 seconds, 2 minutes, something like that, that will change. Be careful and watch for it, because it may not stay dull. The condition of the mind may change. And that's also especially true with feelings, like feelings of anxiety and whatnot. Taking a few deep breaths and getting our mind off of what the problem was and getting it back into a state of happiness and well-being. And those feelings of anxiety will melt away slowly, but over the course of 1 or 2 minutes, as opposed to just being uptight for hours at a time.
Yeah, I've seen it happen. Yeah. It's amazing. Okay, I better go for work, Dhammarato, but thank you so much. This has been
I'm
really
really
good.
glad that you called. Keep calling, and
I will
keep
do.
into it. This is good, and enjoy your practice.
Thank you so much. See you
Nurture
later.
yourself.
I will do. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.